Hello, Comp 2 writers. I am making this video to explain Assignment 2 and Assignment 3 to you since we cannot be in class to do that this week. These assignments I'm giving to you at the same time because they are linked, and I will explain how they are linked. The second assignment is an annotated bibliography, and I will give you a whole lot more information about that in a minute. And then the third paper is the poetry explication paper. Explication just means explain, so it's a paper where you will explain something about a poem. Okay, the annotated bibliography, those are the sources for the poetry explication paper. So this is basically one paper, and I've broken it into two assignments. Assignment 2 is the research part of the paper. Assignment 3 is the writing part of the paper. So we're just kind of spreading this out across two assignments. We're slowing down that research process, so you'll have a lot of time to get your sources together for the paper. And creating an annotated bibliography and what you do to create one of those are really important research skills that you will use in other college classes. You might use them later on in your career. If you go to grad school, you'll for sure use these research skills. So these are important for you to learn now so you can use them later. And you might have done something like this before, and if you have, that's great. Okay, the annotated bibliography, Assignment 2, is due Thursday, March 11th, and then the poetry explication paper is due Thursday, April 15th. So you'll see that those due dates, especially for the third paper, are kind of far away, but just remember, in my experience at least, semesters always go by more quickly than I think they are, and I've experienced that as a student and as a teacher. Okay. And you'll be able to revise both of these. These are major writing assignments, so you will have that revision option on each one of these. All right, let's look at the explication paper first. So that's Assignment 3. I've got both assignment sheets up here, and both of these are in Blackboard. I've got folders for Assignment 2 and Assignment 3, and the assignment sheets are in those folders. Okay, here we have our course objectives up at the top. I've got that on both of these assignment sheets. Okay, what you're going to do is choose from a list of poems, and the list of poems is at the end of this assignment sheet. All of these poems are in your composition mix textbook, so you don't need to go look them up or track them down anywhere. They are all in your book. Not all of the poems in our book are on the list, and I'll explain why. I used to do it that way, but I realized there are a couple of poems that are really hard to track down sources for. So I went ahead and took those off the list just because I had students running into trouble finding sources for them. And that can happen when you're trying to research a poem that's not very old, and there just hasn't been as much time for scholars to write about them. You'll find a lot more on the older poems, like Emily Dickinson, her poem that's on this list. There's a ton of sources for hers. Robert Frost, Langston Hughes, a couple of his poems have a lot of sources on them. So, okay, what you're doing for this paper is you're choosing a poem, and you're going to identify some literary devices that are working in this poem. So you might remember literary devices from high school. Those are the different things that are working in poetry or in a piece of writing to help the author get their meaning across. So that's things like metaphor and personification and simile. There's a whole lot of them, and there's a list of them in Blackboard, I think in the Assignment 3 folder. So you can look at those literary devices. If we can get back into class next week, into the classroom, we'll go over those in class too. So what you're going to do is write a paper where you're making an argument, basically. You're saying these are the literary devices this author used to get the meaning of this poem across. Okay, so once you know what poem you want to write about, now you can start looking for sources. So let's talk about that a little bit. On this assignment, you need to use academic sources. On the first assignment, the academic success proposal, it was okay to use internet sources. For this one, you need to use academic sources. And that's because I really want you to know how to find these academic sources in a database. That's another important skill that you'll learn through doing this assignment. So you don't want to use Google because who knows what you'll find on Google. Also, even if you do find something you could use, like in Google Scholar, there's a good chance they're going to want you to pay for that. And I don't want anyone to pay for anything because Pulaski Tech pays a lot of money for all of their students to have free access to the resources available in our databases through the library. Okay, so make sure you're in the library's databases, and we'll talk more later about how to access those. These are peer-reviewed academic journals. So what the articles you're looking for are scholars who have researched these poems and have written about them and have gotten these essays they've written published in academic journals. Not just anyone can get published in an academic journal. They have to submit it. It has to be reviewed by a group of their peers. That's why it's called peer-reviewed. Sometimes it's sent back to them for changes and revisions, and then they can finally get it published. But you know that it's been through all of those steps to get published. That's going to give it a whole lot more credibility than something you might find on the internet. Okay, and you can access Pulaski Tech's library databases from any computer as long as you're logged into your Pulaski Tech account. So you do not have to be on campus to access those. That's another great thing. Back in my day, I had to actually go to the library. Now we don't have to do that, which is great, especially since COVID and weather are both going on at the same time. Okay, there is a folder in Blackboard. It says course resources. I'm going to put that in a folder called research resources that says click on research tips from your Pulaski Tech libraries. And we'll go through that in class, but you can go ahead and be looking around in that if you want to. Okay, so what you want to do is look for 5 sources. But we're going to go back over to the assignment number 2 sheet. This is the annotated bibliography. So this is the part of the paper where you're looking up sources, and you need to find 5. So you want 5 sources where a scholar is talking about the literary devices that were used in the poem that you are writing about. Okay, so you'll have a 5-entry annotated bibliography. So here's what you need for each source. Annotated means you're writing some notes about each source, and what you're going to need is 4 sentences of annotation, and this assignment sheet tells you exactly what those sentences need to say. So, let's just say you've found your first source, and you're going to put this on your annotated bibliography. The first thing you need is the complete MLA citation. You can go to Purdue OWL, and it will show you how to create a citation for an article that was found in an academic journal. Also, in the databases you're looking in, there's a good chance there's an MLA citation generator in those. You can use that also. Make sure you select MLA 8. Some of them still have MLA 7, and MLA has an update since then. So make sure you're selecting MLA 8 for that. Okay, so you have the complete MLA citation. Then you're going to need 4 sentences of annotation. The first sentence will say what the subject and the topic of the text are. The second sentence will identify the author's stance and argument. So, what is the author saying? That Emily Dickinson is using personification in her poem, I Could Not Stop for Death. Just whatever the point is that the author's making in the article you found. The third sentence should be how you know that the source is credible. And what you can say on every single one of those is, I know this source is credible because I found it in an academic journal or a peer-reviewed academic journal. The last sentence should explain how you'll use that text to support your thesis. So what you'll have is the MLA citation, 4 sentences. Those will each be worth a point each. So that's 5 total. And we'll look at how the grade breaks down here in a minute. Also, in addition to an annotated bibliography, you will also include an abstract. An abstract is it's just a short paragraph that tells what a paper is going to be about. And also, again, I have right here in this paragraph right here what needs to be in the abstract. So you need to explain what the topic of the paper will be and how you plan to develop it, what you've completed already, your working thesis statement. That means it might change, but go ahead and have a thesis statement that you think will work at that point. And you want to make sure you put the abstract and the annotated bibliography all in the same document, and this all needs to be in MLA format. Okay, here's how the grade breaks down for the annotated bibliography. So I told you that each citation and annotation will be 5 points each. So times that by 5 sources, that'll be 25%. So that's a quarter of your paper's grade. So those are important. Also, the credibility of your sources is 20%. I just want to make sure you're getting those from academic sources. The abstract will be another 25%, so that's also important. And then grammar, mechanics, MLE format, 15%, which is similar to other assignments we've done. Okay, so once you have all that together, then it's time to start working on your paper, which is assignment 3. The good news is by the time you get to this point, you will have your sources, you'll have the complete MLA citations already written out. You can just copy and paste those onto your works cited page. You'll already have a thesis. You'll have an idea of what you're going to be writing in this paper. So you'll have a really good start. You won't be starting from scratch. One important thing I need to say is after you've turned in your annotated bibliography, I'm not going to let anyone change the poem they're writing about. That's because if you change at that point, you've got to start all over and go back and start looking up sources for a different poem. So at that point, you'll need to stick with the poem that you've already chosen and write your paper on that. Okay, this paper will be a minimum of 800 words. That's longer than the first assignment we had, but remember this isn't due until the middle of April. You're going to have a long time to work on it. So a minimum of 800. It can go over 800, but it does need to have that minimum, not counting the works cited page, and it needs to be in MLA format. Okay. Here's some important dates for this assignment. On Thursday, March 11th, or for these assignments, I should say. That's when the annotated bibliography is due. Then Thursday, April 8th is when the revision of that assignment is due. That's optional. If you want to try for a higher grade on that, you can. Then Thursday, April 15th, assignment 3 is due in Blackboard by 11:59 p.m. And then Thursday, May 6th, which is finals week, except for your class, you won't have a final. You'll turn in the portfolio instead. But on that day, May 6th, that's when the revision of the third assignment is due. Again, that is optional. That's if you want to try for a higher grade. We'll also be doing peer review for both these assignments. You can get feedback on them from, not just from me, but also from other people in your class. And here's how the grade for the third paper breaks down. Clarity and organization is 20%. Topic focus and scope, just kind of making sure you're staying on topic and not straying off to some other thing, 15%. Quality of sources, again, that's important, 20%. Length is 15%, so please make sure you get at least 800 words or it'll drop you a letter grade, more than a letter grade actually. Grammar mechanics 15%, and then MLA format and proper citation is 15%. Here is the list of poems. You can look at those. You can look them up in your book, decide what you would like to write about. And I've got a 15-minute limit on these videos and my time is almost up. So this is the video. We'll talk more about this in class. I will see you soon.